The photograph lay face down on Colonel William Harper's mahogany desk, gathering dust for 3 years before Anna found it. This is the story of how a single image shattered a girl's entire understanding of love, loyalty, and the man she called father. Berlin, May 1945. The air tasted of ash and wet concrete, the smell of a city that had stopped burning but hadn't yet learned to breathe. 15-year-old Anna Harper, born Anna Richter, though she didn't know it yet, pressed her forehead against the transport truck's canvas flap, watching the American sector fade into the gray distance. Her father sat beside her, ramrod straight in his olive uniform, jaw set in that expression she'd learned, meant don't ask questions now, sweetheart. Colonel William Harper had been her entire world since she was 5 years old. He'd taught her English with flashcards at the kitchen table. He'd carried her on his shoulders through the ruins of Frankfurt when her legs grew tired. He'd sung her to sleep with off-key renditions of You Are My Sunshine when the nightmares came, and they came often, though she could never remember what they were about. She knew only fragments of her origin story. Her parents died in the war, casualties of the camps, and Colonel Harper had found her wandering alone, shivering and silent, clutching a stuffed rabbit with one missing ear. He'd promised her safety. He'd given her his name. But Anna didn't know that her father, her real father, Klaus Richter, had died with his hands around William Harper's throat. The truck jolted over a pothole. Anna's hand shot out to steady the wooden box on her lap, the one containing everything the colonel deemed worth keeping from their 3 years in occupied Germany. Inside, her American citizenship papers, a silver locket Harper said belonged to her mother, his commendation medals, and a single photograph he'd forbidden her to look at. Some memories, he'd told her once, are kindnesses we offer the dead. She'd never questioned him, not once. After this hook, let me ask you something. Where are you watching from? And what time is it where you are? Drop a comment below. And if you're already drawn into Anna's story, hit that like button and subscribe, because what happens next will make you question everything you think you know about family. The transport rumbled through the checkpoint at Tempelhof. 2 MP guards waved them through without inspection. Everyone knew Colonel Harper, the man who'd run the Displaced Persons Processing Center with legendary efficiency. What they didn't know was how many files he'd altered, how many records he'd buried, how many truths he'd locked away in a safe only he could open. Anna shifted in her seat, and the box lid creaked open just an inch. She caught a glimpse of the photograph's edge, sepia-toned, a corner of someone's face. Her pulse quickened with that old, familiar curiosity, the one Harper always deflected with a smile and a subject change. "We'll be home by Christmas," the colonel said, not looking at her. Home meant Virginia, a farmhouse with white shutters he'd inherited from his parents, a place Anna had seen only in letters and snapshots, a place with no ruins, no soldiers, no ghosts. "Will I go to a real school?" Anna asked in English, though German still felt more natural on her tongue. "The best school in the county." He finally turned to her, and his expression softened in that way that made her chest ache with gratitude. "You'll have friends your own age, normal life, everything I promised." But normal was a luxury built on secrets. The truck crossed into the French sector, and Anna noticed her father's jaw tighten again, his eyes fixed on something in the distance. She followed his gaze to a burned-out building, its walls still standing like a broken tooth. Someone had spray-painted words across the facade in German. "Wer schweigt, stimmt zu." Who remains silent, consents. Anna couldn't have known that those words had been her real father's final message, scrawled in his own blood on a barracks wall 6 miles from where she now sat. She couldn't have known that Colonel William Harper had stood before that wall, read those words, and made a choice that would haunt him for the rest of his life. The photograph in the box showed 3 people, a young German couple, arms around each other, laughing. Between them, a little girl in a white dress, maybe 4 years old, holding a stuffed rabbit. The same rabbit Anna still kept hidden under her pillow, its remaining ear soft from years of anxious rubbing. Anna's fingers itched toward the box lid, but before she could open it fully, Harper's hand closed over hers, gentle but unmistakably firm. "Not yet," he said quietly. "When you're ready. When I'm ready." She pulled her hand back, confused by the crack in his voice, by the way his eyes wouldn't meet hers. What was he protecting her from? Or was he protecting himself? The truck rolled on toward the airfield, carrying a girl who didn't know her real name, and a man who'd convinced himself that love could absolve any sin. 3 years later, on her 16th birthday, Anna would find that photograph again, and she would learn that monsters don't always wear uniforms. Sometimes they tuck you in at night. The Virginia farmhouse smelled like lemon polish and old wood, a sharp contrast to the damp concrete Anna had known in Berlin. This was supposed to be her fresh start, but some stains run deeper than memory. Autumn, 1948. Anna Harper sat at the kitchen table of the white-shuttered house, conjugating Latin verbs for her tutor while golden afternoon light slanted through gauze curtains. Outside, maple leaves spiraled down in shades of amber and rust. The war felt a world away, buried under 3 years of carefully constructed American normalcy. She was 13 now, taller, her German accent nearly erased except when she was tired or angry. The nightmares had faded to maybe once a month, fragmentary things she couldn't quite grasp upon waking. A man's voice singing, the smell of coffee and cigarettes, hands lifting her up, up, up toward a gray sky. Colonel Harper, she still thought of him as the Colonel more often than father, though she'd never say it aloud, had retired from active duty and taken a position at the War Department in Washington. He commuted 3 days a week, leaving Anna in the care of Mrs. Davison, a plump widow who cooked pot roast and asked no questions about the past. "Anna, dear, you're drifting again?" Mrs. Davison said gently, setting down a glass of milk. "Third declension nouns won't learn themselves." Anna forced her attention back to the textbook, but her mind kept wandering to the locked study upstairs. The Colonel kept it immaculate. His medals in shadow boxes, his service photographs arranged chronologically, his filing cabinets alphabetized and padlocked. She'd never been explicitly forbidden from entering, but the message was clear. Some rooms were borders not meant to be crossed. Last week, she'd noticed him burning papers in the backyard fire pit late at night when he thought she was asleep. She'd watched from her bedroom window as orange light painted his face, as he fed page after page into the flames, his expression carved from stone. What was he destroying? The question lodged in her chest, like a splinter. That evening, Harper came home early, his briefcase heavy with files marked "Confidential" in red ink. He found Anna in the living room, curled up with a library copy of All Quiet on the Western Front, and his face went pale. "Where did you get that?" His voice was too sharp, too controlled. "The school library. It's for English class. We're studying." "You're not reading that." He plucked the book from her hands, his fingers trembling slightly. "I'll speak to your teacher. There are better books. American books." Anna stared at him, confused by the fear flickering behind his eyes. "It's just a novel, Father. About the First War, not—" "I know what it's about." He softened, catching himself, and sat beside her on the sofa. The cushions exhaled old air. "Anna, sweetheart, I just want you to move forward, not backward. You've come so far. Why dwell on all that ugliness?" "Because I can't remember it," she wanted to say. "Because there's a hole in my head shaped like my first 5 years, and sometimes I hear echoes from that hole. A woman humming, a man laughing, the sound of my own voice speaking words I no longer understand." But she nodded, swallowing the question. "Okay, Father." He kissed her forehead, and she smelled his aftershave. Bay rum and something metallic, like old keys. "That's my girl." After he retreated to his study, Anna sat in the dimming light, feeling the weight of all the things they never discussed. The Colonel had given her everything: safety, education, a future. She owed him gratitude, loyalty, love. So why did it sometimes feel like a debt she could never repay? Winter came early that year. By December, snow blanketed the farm in thick silence, and Anna spent long hours reading by the fireplace while Harper worked upstairs. She'd started keeping a journal, writing in English but occasionally letting German words slip through. Heimweh, Sehnsucht, words that had no perfect translation, but somehow fit the ache in her chest. One afternoon, Mrs. Davison sent her to the study to fetch Harper for lunch. Anna knocked twice, heard no answer, and eased the door open. The room was empty. Harper must have stepped out to the barn. Anna's eyes traveled over the familiar landscape: the mahogany desk, the filing cabinets, the shadow boxes. And there, on the corner of the desk, a cardboard file box she'd never seen before, lid slightly ajar. A label in faded type: Richter, K. Disciplinary, deceased. Her heart kicked against her ribs. Richter. Why did that name make her palms sweat? She crossed the room in 4 steps, her pulse roaring in her ears. Inside the box, a stack of documents, some in English, some in German. She lifted the top page carefully, hands shaking. Prisoner 4721, Klaus Richter. Detained October 1944. Charges: disseminating anti-Reich propaganda, aiding enemy intelligence operations. A photograph was clipped to the file. A man in his 30s, gaunt, dark-haired, eyes burning with defiant intelligence. Beneath the photo, a handwritten note in Harper's distinctive script: interrogated 11/3/44 through 2/15/45. Subject uncooperative. Transferred to isolation. Anna's vision blurred. She flipped to the next page. Another note, dated February 19th, 1945. Subject expired following altercation. Cause of death: acute trauma. Child, female, approx. 5 source, recovered from subject's quarters. Mother confirmed executed 11/44. Child nonverbal, malnourished. No surviving family located. The words swam before her eyes. Mother executed. Father died. Child recovered. The floor tilted beneath her feet. A door slammed downstairs. Harper's voice calling her name. Anna shoved the file back into the box, her hands clumsy with shock, and fled the study just as his footsteps hit the stairs. She barely made it to her room before the tears came. Silent, choking, born from a truth she didn't yet fully understand but felt in every cell of her body. Klaus Richter wasn't just some random prisoner. He was her father, and Colonel William Harper, the man who sang her to sleep, who called her sweetheart, who promised her the world, had watched him die. Anna spent 3 days pretending everything was normal while her mind screamed with questions she couldn't ask. The performance of innocence is exhausting when you've just discovered you're living with your father's killer. She moved through the farmhouse like a ghost, responding to Harper's small talk with careful smiles, helping Mrs. Davison with dishes, finishing her Latin homework with mechanical precision. But at night, alone in her room, she pressed her face into her pillow and tried to remember, tried so hard to remember, a man's voice, a man's hands, a father who wasn't William Harper. Nothing came. Just fragments, the smell of tobacco, a laugh that rumbled deep in a chest, strong arms swinging her in circles while she shrieked with joy. Were those memories real, or was her desperate mind inventing them? By the fourth day, Anna had made a decision. She would return to the study. She would read everything in that box. She would learn who Klaus Richter was, what he'd done, and why Harper had hidden the truth for 8 years. The opportunity came on a gray January morning when Harper drove to Washington for meetings and Mrs. Davison left for her weekly trip to the grocer. Anna had maybe 2 hours. She climbed the stairs with her heart hammering, entered the study, and went straight to the desk. The box was gone. Anna tore through the filing cabinets, locked. She checked the closet, behind the books, under the desk. Nothing. Harper had moved it, hidden it, maybe burned it like all those other papers. Panic rising, she yanked open desk drawers until she found one that stuck. She jimmied it with a letter opener, and the drawer jerked free, spilling its contents across the floor. Photographs scattered like fallen leaves. Anna dropped to her knees, gathering them with shaking hands. Most showed displaced persons processing centers, lines of thin, hollow-eyed people waiting for food, for papers, for answers. But one photo stopped her cold. A little girl, maybe 4 years old, standing beside a tall man in civilian clothes. The girl wore a pale dress, her dark hair in pigtails. She was laughing, reaching up toward the man's face. And the man, gaunt, dark-haired, his expression tender despite the exhaustion carved into his features, was Klaus Richter. Anna knew it was him even before she flipped the photo over and read the penciled notation on the back. Klaus and Anna, September 1944. Her own name, her own face, her own father. She wasn't Anna Harper. She was Anna Richter. The truth detonated in her chest. She had been his daughter first. He had held her, loved her, made her laugh. And William Harper had taken that away, had taken everything away, and then rebuilt her in his image, speaking his language, bearing his name, believing his lies. Anna's hands curled into fists, crumpling the photograph's edges. A floorboard creaked behind her. I was going to tell you. Harper's voice was quiet, defeated. He stood in the doorway, still wearing his overcoat, snow melting on his shoulders. When you turned 18, when you were old enough to understand. Anna didn't turn around. Understand what? That you murdered my father? It wasn't murder, it was... He stopped, exhaled hard. It was complicated. Complicated? She whirled to face him, the photograph clutched to her chest. You watched him die. You took me from him. You erased him like he never existed. Harper's face was gray, aged 10 years and 10 seconds. Anna, please, let me explain. My name isn't Anna Harper. Her voice cracked. Is it even Anna at all, or did you change that too? Your name was always Anna. That I kept. He took a careful step into the room, hands raised as if approaching a wounded animal. Your father, Klaus, he was a good man. Brave, principled. He was feeding intelligence to the Allies, risking his life to undermine the regime from within. Then why was he in your camp? Harper's jaw worked. The Gestapo discovered his network. They arrested him, his wife, your mother, Elsa, and dozens of others. By the time they were transferred to our sector, your mother was already dead. Klaus was... He was broken, Anna. Half-starved, beaten. But he wouldn't stop fighting. Anna's throat burned. Fighting you? Fighting the system, the bureaucracy, the war. Harper sank into his desk chair, suddenly looking every one of his 53 years. He demanded to know where you were. We'd placed you in temporary care. Standard procedure for unaccompanied minors. He went berserk, attacked a guard. I tried to pull him off, and he... Harper touched his throat, and Anna saw the faint white scar she'd never questioned before. He tried to kill me. We struggled. He fell. Harper's voice dropped to a whisper. His head hit the corner of a table. It was fast. One moment he was screaming your name, the next he was just gone. The room felt airless. His last words, Harper continued, were tell Anna her papa loved her. Tell her we tried to be good. Anna's vision swam with tears she refused to let fall. And instead of telling me, you took me. You made me forget him. You made me love you. I saved you. Harper's composure cracked. Do you understand what would have happened to you otherwise? An orphaned German child with parents executed as traitors? You would have been institutionalized, labeled Mischling, polluted, shunned by both sides. I gave you a future. You gave yourself a daughter. The accusation hung between them like smoke. Harper's shoulders sagged. Yes, he admitted. God help me, yes. I was 45 years old, alone, childless. And there you were, this little girl who'd lost everything, who looked at me with those enormous eyes and trusted me to make it right. I thought I could. I thought love would be enough to erase the past. But it wasn't, Anna said flatly. Because the past doesn't erase. It just waits. She stood, still clutching the photograph, and walked toward the door, Hunter reached for her arm, and she jerked away like he'd burned her. Anna, please. You're all I have. She stopped in the doorway without turning. That's not my problem anymore. Alone in her room, Anna laid the photograph on her nightstand and stared at her father's face, her real father's face, until the light faded and his features dissolved into shadow. She had spent 8 years learning to be Anna Harper. Now she had to learn to be Anna Richter, and somewhere in the space between those two names, she had to decide whether forgiveness was even possible. Anna stopped speaking to Harper entirely, communicating only through terse notes left on the kitchen table. Silence, she discovered, was the sharpest weapon a daughter could wield against a guilty father. February 1949. The farmhouse became a mausoleum of unspoken words. Harper tried everything. Apologies slipped under her door. Her favorite meals prepared and left untouched. Gentle knocks that went unanswered. Mrs. Davison watched the Cold War unfold with worried eyes, but said nothing, understanding instinctively that this was a wound beyond her ability to bandage. Anna threw herself into research. The county library became her sanctuary. She checked out books on post-war Germany, prisoner processing, displaced persons camps. She learned the vocabulary of occupation, denazification, fraternization, repatriation. She studied photographs of skeletal prisoners, of orphaned children, of cities reduced to ash and rubble, searching every face for some echo of recognition. At night, she lay awake constructing alternate histories. What if Klaus Richter had survived? What if the Allies had won faster, liberated the camp sooner, saved Elsa before the execution? What if Anna had grown up speaking German in a small apartment somewhere, her father teaching her to question authority, her mother humming while she cooked, a whole different life stretching before her like an unmapped road? But those were fairy tales for the dead. One Saturday afternoon, Anna returned from the library to find Harper waiting in the kitchen, a wooden box on the table between them. Not the personnel file box, something older, more worn, with brass hinges green with age. "I want to show you something," he said quietly, "if you'll let me." Anna stood in the doorway, arms crossed, her face a careful blank. Harper opened the box. Inside lay a collection of letters, some in German, some in English, all on thin paper yellowed with time. He lifted one carefully, as if it might disintegrate in his hands. "Your father wrote these," Harper said, "to you, in the last months of his life." Anna's breath caught. She moved closer despite herself, drawn by the sight of unfamiliar handwriting, angular, urgent, dense with crossed-out words and revisions. Harper's voice was steady but pained. He knew he wouldn't survive. He'd heard rumors about prisoners who'd attacked guards. He knew the penalty. So he wrote to you. 47 letters over 3 months. I was supposed to destroy them. Protocol for disciplinary cases. Instead, I kept them. "Why?" Anna whispered. "Because they were yours. Because even then, some part of me knew you'd need them someday." He slid the box across the table. "They're in German. I never read most of them. My German isn't good enough. But they're yours now. They always should have been." Anna's hands trembled as she lifted the first letter. The date at the top, 3 November 1944. She began to read, translating haltingly aloud. "My dearest Anna, my little star. They tell me your mama is gone. I do not know how to explain death to a child who should only know laughter. Perhaps you will not remember me when you are grown. Perhaps that is mercy. But I must write these words anyway, must send them forward into whatever future you have, so you will know. We loved you. We tried to be good. We failed the world, but we never failed you. Tonight I sang you our song. Do you remember? The one about the little bird who forgot how to fly? I sang it to these gray walls and pretended you could hear. Be brave, my Anna. Be kinder than the world deserves. And if you ever wonder whether you were wanted, know this. You were the only pure thing in a poisoned time." Anna's vision blurred. She set the letter down carefully, as if it were made of glass, and reached for the next. And the next. She read for hours while Harper sat across from her in silence, bearing witness to the resurrection of a man he'd tried to bury. Some letters were practical. Instructions for finding relatives in Munich. Descriptions of family heirlooms hidden before the arrests. Advice for navigating post-war chaos. Others were achingly tender. Memories of Anna's first words, her favorite foods, the way she used to dance when Klaus played his accordion. One letter, dated February 12, 1945, just days before his death, made Anna's throat close completely. "I have done something foolish, my star. I have made an enemy of the American colonel who holds our fates in his hands. He is not a cruel man. This I must say truthfully. But he is tired and far from home, and I have pushed him too far in demanding to see you. If I do not survive, I want you to know, it was not his fault. The war made monsters of us all, and the prison camps, even the American ones, are places where desperation breeds tragedy. If by some miracle he takes pity on you, if he finds you a home, do not hate him on my account. Hate is a poison I will not pass to you. Take whatever kindness the world offers. You owe the dead nothing but memory." Anna looked up at Harper, tears streaming down her face. "He forgave you. Even before he died, he forgave you." Harper's eyes were red-rimmed. I've spent 8 years trying to forgive myself. I'm not sure I've managed it. He asked me not to hate you. And do you? Anna sat with the question, feeling its weight. The honest answer was complicated. A tangle of grief and gratitude, betrayal and love, rage at what had been stolen, and wonder at what had been given in its place. I don't know, she finally said. I don't know who I'm supposed to be now. Anna Richter died with her parents. Anna Harper is built on lies, so who am I? Harper reached across the table, not touching her, but close enough that she could if she wanted. You're both, and neither. You're whoever you choose to become. The kitchen clock ticked into the silence. Outside, the first cardinals of spring called to each other through bare branches. Anna gathered the letters carefully, reverently, and held them against her chest. I need time. I need to read all of these. Learn who he was, learn who I was, and then maybe, I can figure out what comes next. Take all the time you need. She stood, the box of letters in her arms, and paused at the doorway. Father. The word felt strange now, stretched between two men. Colonel Harper, thank you for keeping these, for giving them to me. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but it was a beginning. That night, Anna read by candlelight until dawn, her real father's voice rising from the pages like a ghost learning to sing again. And somewhere in the space between German and English, between Richter and Harper, between the child she'd been and the woman she was becoming, Anna began to understand that identity wasn't something given or taken. It was something built, word by word, choice by choice, from the ruins of the past. 3 months after reading the letters, Anna made a decision that would crack open the last sealed door between truth and consequence. She was going to find out exactly what happened the night Klaus Richter died. May 1949. Spring had transformed the Virginia landscape into an explosion of dogwood blossoms and new grass. But inside the farmhouse, winter still held its ground. Anna and Harper had achieved a fragile detente, polite conversation at meals, shared space without warmth, the careful choreography of two people trying not to collide. But Anna's questions had only multiplied with each letter she read. Klaus Richter's final entries grew increasingly frantic, describing confrontations with guards, denied requests to see his daughter, growing desperation as he realized time was running out. And then, nothing. The letters stopped on February 15th. Harper's personnel report said Klaus died on February 19th. 4 days unaccounted for. What happened in those 4 days? Anna found her answer in the most unlikely place. Mrs. Davison's brother, Harold Davison, had been a medic stationed at the displaced persons camp in early 1945. He visited the farmhouse one Sunday afternoon, a graying man with kind eyes and a pronounced limp from a war injury. Over pot roast and small talk, he mentioned his service, and Anna's ears pricked up. "You were at the DP camp?" she asked carefully. "In Germany? With Colonel Harper?" "Different camp, actually. But we shared personnel sometimes." Harold studied her with sudden interest. "You're the little girl Bill adopted, aren't you? I heard about that. Brave thing he did, taking you in after your folks passed." Anna's fingers tightened on her fork. "Do you remember a prisoner named Klaus Richter?" The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. Harper's face went pale. Mrs. Davison glanced between them, confused. Harold frowned, thinking. "Richter. Dark-haired fellow, wasn't he? Skinny as a rail, but fought like a cornered animal?" "You saw him." "Treated him once, actually. Bill called me over because Richter had collapsed in the yard. Exhaustion, malnutrition. This was maybe a week before. He trailed off, catching Harper's expression. Before the incident. Anna leaned forward. What incident? Please, I need to know. Harold looked to Harper, silently asking permission. Harper closed his eyes, gave a barely perceptible nod. Richter had been demanding to see his daughter, you, for weeks, Harold said slowly. The bureaucracy kept stalling. By mid-February, he'd stopped eating, stopped sleeping. Bill tried to arrange a visit, but the paperwork was tied up in some legal question about custody and citizenship. Richter thought Bill was deliberately keeping you apart. Was he? Anna asked, looking at Harper directly for the first time in weeks. Harper's voice was hollow. No, I was trying to expedite it, but the system moved like molasses, and Klaus didn't believe me. By February 18th, he'd become unmanageable. He attacked a guard during evening roll call, broke the man's nose. They put him in isolation. Harold picked up the thread. I wasn't there that night, the 19th, but I heard about it afterward. Richter had somehow gotten out of his cell. They said he picked the lock with a nail he'd pried from the wall. He made it all the way to the administrative building before Bill intercepted him. Anna's heart hammered. And then? Harper stood abruptly, walking to the window, his back to the table. When he spoke, his voice was barely audible. He was going for the records room. He wanted to find your file, find out where you were. I tried to stop him. I grabbed his arm, told him to stand down. He spun around with the nail in his hand, and I thought he was going to stab me with it. I pushed him. He stumbled backward. There was a desk behind him, solid oak, sharp corners. The silence was suffocating. He hit it head first. The sound. Harper's shoulders shook. I've heard bones break in combat. This was worse. He fell so fast. By the time the medics arrived, he was unconscious. He died 2 hours later without waking up. So it was an accident, Anna said flatly. It was self-defense that became an accident that became a cover-up. Harper turned to face her, his expression raw with 8 years of suppressed guilt. I could have reported it accurately. Should have. But I panicked. If the truth came out, that a prisoner died trying to reach his daughter, that I was the one who pushed him, there would be an investigation. Questions about why you were being kept from him. Questions about my judgment. My career would be over. So you lied. I altered the report. Made it seem like he'd attacked me unprovoked during a routine inspection. Minimized my role. Buried the context. Harper's hands were shaking, and then I compounded it by taking you. Told myself I was honoring his last words about accepting kindness. But really, I was trying to balance the scales, trying to make his death mean something by giving you the life he wanted for you. Anna felt something crack open inside her chest. Not forgiveness exactly, but understanding. The terrible human logic of guilt and grief and desperation. You stole my father from me twice, she said quietly. Once when you killed him. Once when you erased him. Yes, and you've been punishing yourself ever since. Harper's laugh was bitter. Every single day. Every time you called me father. Every time you smiled at me like I was worth loving. Mrs. Davison had tears streaming down her face. Harold sat frozen, his pot roast congealing on his plate. Outside, a mockingbird ran through its repertoire of borrowed songs. Anna stood, walked to where Harper stood by the window, and did something that surprised them both. She took his hand, the hand that had pushed Klaus Richter, the hand that had held her through nightmares, the hand that had signed adoption papers, and forged a new life from the wreckage of the old. "I'm not going to pretend this is okay," she said. "I'm not going to say I forgive you, because I'm not sure forgiveness is mine to give. That belongs to my father, my real father, and he's 8 years dead. I know. But he told me not to hate you, and I've spent 3 months trying to honor that, trying to figure out what he would want from me." She squeezed his hand once, then let go. "He would want me to live, to have a future, to take whatever kindness the world offers." Harper's face crumpled. "Anna, I'm not staying," she interrupted. "I can't live in this house pretending we're a normal family. I can't keep calling you father when that word belongs to a ghost. But I'm not disappearing either. I'm going to finish school. I'm going to apply to colleges with my real name, Anna Richter. And maybe someday, when I've figured out who I actually am, we can find a way to be in each other's lives that isn't built on lies." It wasn't reconciliation, it wasn't closure, but it was honest. And after 8 years of carefully constructed fiction, honesty felt like oxygen. Harper nodded, unable to speak. Mrs. Davison reached for Anna's hand, squeezing it with wordless support. Harold quietly excused himself, understanding that some conversations were too sacred for witnesses. That evening, Anna packed a single suitcase. Her clothes, her father's letters, the photograph of Klaus and her 4-year-old self. She was moving to a boarding house in town, a room of her own paid for with money from a scholarship Harper had helped her apply for months ago. As she carried her suitcase down the stairs, Harper waited by the door. "If you need anything, I know where to find you." They stood in the doorway, the spring evening soft around them, the gap between them unbridgeable and necessary. "For what it's worth," Harper said, "your father was right about you. You're the only pure thing I've ever known." Anna didn't respond. She simply walked into the twilight, toward a future she would build herself, carrying both her fathers with her, one in memory, one in the complicated territory between love and betrayal. Behind her, William Harper closed the door and finally allowed himself to weep. Anna's new independence lasted exactly 6 weeks before the past found her in a way she never anticipated. Sometimes justice arrives not as a verdict, but as a witness finally ready to speak. July 1949. The boarding house room was small but hers. A single bed, a desk by the window, wallpaper printed with faded roses. Anna had found work at the county library, shelving books and helping patrons with research requests. The irony wasn't lost on her. Spending her days organizing other people's stories while her own remained half-written, trapped between 2 languages and 2 identities. She'd been accepted to 3 colleges for the fall semester, all under the name Anna Richter. Reclaiming her father's name had felt like resurrection and theft simultaneously, bringing something dead back to life, but also stealing from the ghost of the girl she'd been as Anna Harper. She still saw Harper occasionally. Awkward Sunday dinners at the farmhouse where they discussed safe topics, her studies, the weather, books she was reading. They never mentioned Klaus. They never mentioned the night he died. The truth sat between them like a third person at the table, silent and unmovable. But on a sweltering Thursday afternoon in mid-July, everything changed. Anna was reshelving books in the history section when a woman approached her, mid-40s, elegant in a navy dress despite the heat, her graying hair pulled back in a neat chignon. She held a newspaper clipping in her hands, and her eyes were red-rimmed, as if she'd been crying for days. "Excuse me," the woman said in accented English, German, Anna realized with a jolt. Are you Anna Richter? Daughter of Klaus and Elsa Richter? Anna's pulse spiked. Yes. Who are you? My name is Margareta Weber. I was your mother's sister. The world tilted. Anna gripped the shelf to steady herself. My mother's. I didn't know she had family. Harper said there were no surviving relatives. Margareta's expression hardened at the name. Colonel William Harper. Yes. I've been looking for you for 4 years, Anna. Ever since the war ended, and I discovered what happened to Elsa and Klaus. She held out the newspaper clipping. It was from a German expatriate newsletter dated 2 weeks earlier. The headline read, American officer faces questions over wartime death. Former POW camp commander under investigation. Anna's hands trembled as she took the paper. The article described allegations that Colonel William Harper had falsified reports about prisoner deaths, suppressed evidence of abuse, and potentially profited from black market operations at the displaced persons camp. Anonymous sources, former guards, fellow officers, had come forward after all these years, their silence finally breaking. There's going to be a hearing, Margaret said quietly. Military tribunal. They're reopening cases from his tenure, including your father's death. Anna, I know this must be overwhelming, but I need to ask you something. Did Colonel Harper ever tell you the truth about what happened to Klaus? Anna's mouth was dry. He told me my father died in an altercation, that it was self-defense. And do you believe him? The question hung in the stale library air, heavy with implications. Did she believe Harper? The man who'd lied to her for 8 years, who'd erased her identity and built a new one on the foundation of his guilt. The man who'd also kept her father's letters, given her a home, sang her to sleep when nightmares came. I don't know what I believe anymore, Anna admitted. Margaret reached for Anna's hand. Your mother was my younger sister. She wrote to me during the war, smuggled letters through the resistance network. The last one I received was in October 1944, just before the Gestapo took her. She wrote about you constantly. How bright you were. How you asked 1,000 questions about everything. How Klaus used to carry you on his shoulders through the market. Tears burned Anna's eyes. I don't remember her. I don't remember any of it. That's what trauma does, child. It's mercy and curse at once. Margaret's grip tightened. But I remember. And I've spent 4 years searching for you because you're the last piece of my sister I have left. The tribunal. They want to speak with you. You're a witness. Possibly the only one who can provide insight into Harper's relationship with Klaus. I was 5 years old when my father died. What could I possibly tell them? You can tell them what Harper told you. You can describe how he's treated you since. And Anna... Margaret hesitated, then continued carefully. There are other witnesses coming forward. Guards who say Harper wasn't just negligent. They say he targeted Klaus specifically, denied him medical care, kept him in isolation longer than regulations allowed. They say he was obsessed with breaking him. Anna's stomach churned. That's not... He said it was an accident. He said he was trying to help. And maybe he believes that now. Guilt has a way of rewriting memory. Margareta's voice gentled. I'm not asking you to condemn him, Anna. I'm asking you to tell the truth, whatever that truth is. Anna looked around the library, the orderly rows of books, the dust motes floating in afternoon sunlight, the careful organization of human knowledge and story. Everything in its proper place, catalogued and contained. Her own story refused such neat shelving. I need to speak with Colonel Harper, Anna said finally. Before any tribunal, before any official testimony, I need to hear him explain this directly. Margaret nodded, understanding. The hearing is in 3 weeks, in Washington. Will you come? I'll come, but I won't lie for him, and I won't lie about him. Whatever I say will be the truth as I understand it. That's all anyone can ask. After Margaret left, Anna sat in the back stairwell of the library and read the newspaper article 3 times. The allegations were damning: systematic abuse, falsified records, prisoners who died under suspicious circumstances. Harper's name appeared again and again, always followed by words like allegedly, purportedly, sources claim. But Anna knew something the article didn't mention, something that complicated the narrative of villain and victim. Klaus Richter's final letter, the one where he absolved Harper of blame, where he acknowledged his own role in pushing the confrontation to its breaking point. Who was right? The witnesses claiming calculated cruelty, or the dying man offering forgiveness? That evening, Anna called the farmhouse. Harper answered on the second ring, his voice wary. He wasn't used to her calling. "It's me," Anna said. "I need to see you. Tonight. It's important." An hour later, they sat across from each other at the kitchen table, the same table where she'd first read her father's letters, where Sunday dinners passed in careful silence, where every conversation for 8 years had been a performance of normalcy. Anna slid the newspaper clipping across the scarred wood. Harper read it slowly, his face draining of color. When he finished, he carefully folded it and placed it beside his untouched coffee. "How much of this is true?" Anna asked. "Some of it. Not all of it. The truth is—" He paused, choosing words carefully. "The truth is more complicated than either version, the one I told you, or the one these witnesses are telling investigators." "Then tell me the actual truth, all of it. Because in 3 weeks, I'm going to testify at your tribunal, and I need to know what I'm walking into." Harper's eyes widened. "You're going to testify?" "My aunt, my mother's sister, found me. She asked me to come. And yes, I'm going. So you have one chance right now to tell me everything. Or I walk into that hearing knowing only pieces, and I tell them exactly that." For a long moment, Harper sat in silence. Then he stood, walked to his study, and returned with a bottle of whiskey and 2 glasses. He poured for them both. Anna didn't drink, but she didn't refuse. "Your father wasn't just a prisoner," Harper began. "He was extraordinary, brilliant. Before the war, he'd been a philosophy professor, and even starving and beaten, his mind was sharper than anyone I'd ever interrogated. He spoke 4 languages. He could quote Kant and Nietzsche and Heidegger. And he never broke, never compromised, never gave us anything except contempt wrapped in intellectual superiority." Harper took a drink, his hands steady but his eyes haunted. "I respected him. God help me, I admired him. And that made it worse because I also hated him. Hated his certainty, his moral clarity, his absolute conviction that he was right, and we, the liberators, were just another version of oppressors. We'd argue for hours during interrogations. Philosophy, ethics, the nature of justice. He made me question everything I thought I knew about the war." "And that threatened you," Anna said quietly. "Yes, because he was right about too many things. About the camps we liberated that weren't so different from the camps we ran. About the way occupation corrupts everyone it touches. About how power makes monsters of ordinary men." Harper's voice cracked. "I wanted to break him. Not physically, I never struck him, never denied him medical care when he truly needed it. But psychologically, I wanted him to admit doubt, to show weakness, to prove he wasn't as incorruptible as he seemed. So you kept him from me? Harper nodded, shame etched in every line of his face. The paperwork was complicated, but I could have expedited it, could have let him see you just once. But I told myself it was inappropriate, that regulations forbade it, that his case was under review. Really, I was punishing him for being better than me. Anna's chest ached with the weight of it, this petty human cruelty wrapped in bureaucratic justification. And then he escaped, she prompted. Then he escaped. And when I found him in the administrative building, when he came at me with that nail, I saw my chance. I could end it. The arguments, the guilt, the way he made me feel small and compromised just by existing. So I pushed him. Harder than necessary. Harder than self-defense required. Harper met her eyes, and Anna saw a truth there that destroyed her. It wasn't quite murder, but it wasn't quite an accident either. It was somewhere in between, a moment where rage and fear and shame combined into something unforgivable. The kitchen clock ticked into the terrible silence. And the witnesses? Anna asked. The ones claiming systematic abuse? Some of them are telling the truth about the camp in general. It was brutal, understaffed, chaotic. Some of them are lying or misremembering or conflating different incidents. And some of them are like me, people who did things they can barely admit to themselves, let alone a tribunal. Anna drank her whiskey in one burning swallow. What do you want me to say at the hearing? Harper shook his head. I want you to tell the truth, whatever you believe that truth to be. I've spent 8 years trying to earn your forgiveness, but maybe that's not what matters. Maybe what matters is that you finally know exactly who I am. Not the hero who saved you, not the villain who killed your father, but a man who did both and has to live with both. Anna stood, her legs unsteady. I'll testify. I'll tell them everything. What you told me, what the letters said, what I believe about your guilt and your attempts at redemption. And then the tribunal will decide. Not me. Not you. The law. That's fair. Anna walked to the door, then paused. For what it's worth, I think my father was right. You're not a monster. You're just a man who made terrible choices and spent the rest of your life trying to balance scales that can never be balanced. Is that enough? Harper asked quietly. I don't know. But it's the truth. Outside, the July night was thick with humidity and the electric buzz of cicadas. Anna walked back to the boarding house through streets illuminated by yellow street lamps, carrying the weight of testimony she hadn't yet given, judgment she couldn't render, and a past that refused to stay buried. 3 weeks until the tribunal. 3 weeks to decide if telling the truth meant destroying the only father she'd ever really known. The military tribunal convened on August 9th, 1949, in a Washington courthouse that smelled of old varnish and institutional coffee. Anna walked into that room carrying 2 fathers, one in memory, one in the defendant's chair, and the impossible weight of deciding which truth mattered more. The hearing room was smaller than Anna had imagined. Oak-paneled walls, a raised bench where 3 uniformed officers sat in judgment, rows of wooden seats mostly empty except for a handful of journalists and witnesses waiting their turn. Margaret sat in the front row, her hands folded in her lap, her face composed, but her eyes tracking Anna's every movement. Harper sat at the defendant's table with his military attorney, a sharp-featured captain named Morrison. Harper had worn his dress uniform, his chest bare of the medals Anna knew he'd earned. He'd told her once that wearing them would feel like a lie, decorations for valor pinned over a heart that had failed its most basic test. When Anna entered, Harper's gaze found hers, and something passed between them. Not forgiveness, not condemnation, just recognition. Two people bound together by tragedy and circumstance, trying to survive the truth. "The tribunal will come to order," announced Colonel Brennan, the presiding officer. His voice carried the flat authority of a man who'd seen too many courts-martial, too many human failures catalogued and judged. "We are here to investigate allegations of misconduct by Colonel William Harper during his service as commanding officer of Displaced Persons Processing Center 17, occupied Germany, 1944 through 1945. The prosecutor, a major named Keller, rose to present the case. He laid out the charges methodically: falsification of records, abuse of authority, negligent homicide in the death of Klaus Richter, and misappropriation of resources. He called witnesses, former guards who described Harper's obsession with breaking certain prisoners, clerks who'd been ordered to alter reports, a doctor who'd been denied access to prisoners in isolation. Each testimony built a portrait of a man drunk on small powers, petty and cruel, indifferent to suffering. Anna listened with her hands clenched in her lap, wondering if she'd ever really known William Harper at all. But then Captain Morrison began the defense, and the portrait shifted. He called witnesses who described Harper's efforts to improve conditions, requisitioning extra medical supplies, fighting with superiors to get more food allocations, personally intervening when guards used excessive force. A chaplain testified that Harper had helped dozens of displaced children find homes, working unpaid hours to navigate adoption bureaucracies. A former interpreter described how Harper had learned basic German specifically to communicate with prisoners in their own language, to show respect even in captivity. "He wasn't perfect," the interpreter said, "but he tried. In a system designed to dehumanize people, he tried to preserve their dignity." By lunch recess, Anna's head was spinning. Both versions were true: Harper as cruel bureaucrat, Harper as compassionate officer. How could one man contain such contradictions? At 2:00, Major Keller called Anna to the stand. She walked forward on unsteady legs, her hand on the Bible as she swore to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth. The words felt like stones in her mouth. "Miss Richter," Keller began, deliberately using her reclaimed name, "please state your relationship to the defendant." Anna's voice was clear despite the tremor in her chest. "Colonel Harper adopted me in 1945 after my parents died. He raised me as his daughter until 6 months ago, when I learned the circumstances of my father's death." "And what did you learn?" "That Klaus Richter, my biological father, died during an altercation with Colonel Harper. That Colonel Harper pushed him, causing injuries that proved fatal. That Harper subsequently falsified the incident report and adopted me without revealing his role in my father's death." The courtroom was silent except for the scratch of the court reporter's pen. "How did you discover this information?" "I found classified files in Colonel Harper's study. Later, he confessed the full truth to me." Keller leaned forward. "In your own words, Miss Richter, how would you characterize Colonel Harper's actions toward your father?" Anna took a breath, feeling the weight of both men pressing down on her. "Objection," Captain Morrison called. "Calls for speculation beyond the witness's direct knowledge." "Overruled," Colonel Brennan said. "The witness may answer." Anna looked directly at Harper. His face was pale but composed, accepting. "I think," she said slowly, that Colonel Harper saw in my father everything he feared about himself. Klaus Richter was principled, uncompromising, certain of his moral ground. Harper was exhausted, disillusioned, trying to do good in a system designed for cruelty. My father's certainty threatened that precarious balance. So you believe the defendant deliberately targeted your father? I believe he kept my father from me longer than necessary. I believe he pushed him harder than self-defense required. But I also believe he spent 8 years trying to atone, not by forgetting what he did, but by honoring the man he killed through raising the daughter left behind. Keller's expression tightened. Miss Richter, are you testifying that Colonel Harper's adoption of you somehow excuses his role in your father's death? No. Anna's voice was firm. I'm testifying that human beings are capable of both cruelty and redemption, and that justice requires acknowledging both. My father wrote 47 letters before he died. In the last one, he asked me not to hate the man who might show me kindness after he was gone. He knew he was pushing toward a confrontation that might kill him. He chose it anyway, knowing the risk. Are you saying your father was responsible for his own death? Anna's eyes filled with tears. I'm saying that in a prison camp in 1945, everyone was responsible and no one was. The war made monsters of ordinary people and heroes of flawed ones. My father was both. Colonel Harper is both. And I'm the child caught between them, trying to honor both truths. Keller tried several more questions, attempting to push Anna toward clearer condemnation, but she held her ground, neither defending Harper nor destroying him, simply testifying to the terrible complexity she'd lived for 8 years. When Captain Morrison cross-examined, he was brief. Miss Richter, in the 6 months since learning the truth, have you felt unsafe with Colonel Harper? No. Has he ever threatened you or attempted to prevent you from coming forward? No. He gave me the letters my father wrote. He confessed everything when I confronted him. He told me to testify honestly here today. One final question. Do you believe Colonel Harper loves you? Anna's throat closed. She looked at Harper, saw tears tracking silently down his face, and felt her own heart break open. Yes, she whispered. I believe he loves me. I also believe he killed my father. Both things are true, and I have to live with both. The testimony concluded. Anna stepped down, her legs shaking, and Margareta caught her in the hallway, holding her while she wept. Over the next 2 days, more witnesses testified. More evidence was presented. The tribunal heard recordings of Harper's interrogations with Klaus, philosophical debates that revealed both men's intelligence and stubbornness. They examined the falsified reports, the timeline discrepancies, the evidence of Harper's guilt and his subsequent cover-up. On August 11th, the tribunal reached its verdict. Colonel Brennan read it in that same flat voice. Having reviewed all testimony and evidence, this tribunal finds that Colonel William Harper did engage in misconduct, including falsification of official reports and abuse of authority. However, we do not find sufficient evidence to support charges of deliberate negligent homicide. The death of Klaus Richter, while resulting from Harper's actions, occurred in the context of a volatile prisoner escape and altercation. Anna held her breath. Colonel Harper is hereby sentenced to reduction in rank to major, forfeiture of pension benefits, and dishonorable discharge from military service. He will face no criminal prosecution, but will be barred from future government employment. It was over. Harper stood, accepted the verdict with military bearing, and was escorted out by MPs. He caught Anna's eyes once more before disappearing through the courthouse doors. She would never forget the expression on his face. Relief and devastation in equal measure. A man finally released from the prison of his own lies, even as the bars of consequence closed around him. Outside the courthouse, Margaret took Anna's hands. "You did well in there, child. You honored both your fathers, the one who gave you life and the one who tried to give you a future. I don't know if either of them would be proud of me. Your father Klaus would be. He asked you to take whatever kindness the world offered. You took it, but you didn't let it blind you to the truth. That takes courage." Anna watched as journalists scattered to file their stories, as witnesses departed in small clusters, as the machinery of justice ground forward, leaving everyone damaged in its wake. "What happens now?" she asked. Margaret smiled, sad but hopeful. "Now you come home with me. Meet your cousins. See photographs of your mother. Learn the stories Harper couldn't tell you. You're not alone anymore, Anna. You have family." Anna thought about the farmhouse in Virginia, about Sunday dinners and careful conversations, about a man who'd sung her to sleep for 8 years while carrying the weight of what he'd done. "I need to see him," she said. "One more time, before I go." Margaret nodded, understanding. Family is complicated. Blood and choice both matter. That evening, Anna found Harper at the farmhouse, sitting on the porch swing where they'd shared so many silent sunsets. He'd changed into civilian clothes, khakis and a worn flannel shirt, and looked smaller somehow, unmade by the loss of his uniform. "I didn't think you'd come," he said quietly. Anna sat beside him, the swing creaking under their weight. "I almost didn't. I'm glad you did." They sat in silence, watching fireflies begin their evening dance across the darkening fields. Somewhere down the road, a dog barked. The world continued, indifferent to their small tragedy. "I'm going to Germany," Anna said finally. "My aunt, Margaret, she wants me to meet the family, learn about my mother, see where I came from." Harper nodded. "You should. You deserve to know all of yourself. I don't know when I'll be back. Maybe not for a long time. I'll be here. Whatever you need, whenever you need it." He paused, then added softly, "I know I don't have the right to say this, but I'm proud of you, Anna, for surviving everything I put you through, for becoming someone better than either of your fathers." Anna felt tears slip down her cheeks. "I wouldn't have survived without you. That's the part I can't reconcile. Hating you for what you took, loving you for what you gave. You don't have to reconcile it. You just have to live with it. Like I've been doing." Anna stood, and Harper stood with her. They faced each other in the dying light. This man who'd killed her father and raised her with love. This girl who'd lost everything and found a broken kind of family in the ruins. "Goodbye, Colonel Harper," she said. "Goodbye, Anna Richter." She walked away without looking back, carrying both her names, both her histories, both her fathers in the complicated geography of her heart. Behind her, William Harper sat back down on the porch swing and finally allowed himself to grieve, not just for Klaus Richter, not just for the career he'd lost, but for the daughter who would always be his and would never truly be his again. The truth had set them both free, and freedom, they'd learned, was just another word for necessary loss. 10 years later, Anna Richter stood in a Munich cemetery, holding the hand of her 6-year-old daughter, watching snow fall on her father's grave. Some circles close slowly, across decades and generations, until the children of tragedy finally learn to carry hope instead of guilt. December 1959. The world had changed in a decade. Germany rebuilding, the Cold War freezing borders into ideological battlegrounds, a new generation learning to live with the scars their parents couldn't speak about. Anna had changed too. She was 26 now, a translator for the United Nations, fluent in 4 languages, married to a kind Austrian journalist named Thomas, who understood that some parts of her would always belong to ghosts. Their daughter, Elsa, named for the grandmother she'd never meet, tugged at Anna's coat. "Mama, why are we visiting this person?" Anna knelt in the snow, brushing flakes from her daughter's dark hair. "This is your grandfather, Klaus. He died before I could really know him, but he was very brave. He tried to make the world better." "Like you do?" Anna smiled, her heart aching with love and loss. "I hope so, sweetheart. I try." She'd erected the headstone herself 2 years ago, after months of research to locate where Klaus had been buried. The Allied forces had interred him in a mass grave with other camp casualties, but Anna had fought bureaucracy and indifference to give him this. A marker with his name, his dates, and the words he'd scrawled on that barracks wall. "Wer schweigt, stimmt zu." Who remains silent, consents. Margaret appeared beside them, older now, but still elegant, still carrying the weight of being the last living witness to Elsa Richter's laughter. "He would have loved her," she said, smiling at little Elsa. "Your daughter has his eyes, that same fierce intelligence. And my mother's name. The best inheritance." They stood together in the falling snow, 3 generations of women bound by love and loss, by the men who'd tried to be good in impossible times. Anna had spent the decade learning her history, studying German philosophy, reading her father's published papers from before the war, tracing her mother's family tree through Margaret's careful records. She'd also maintained a careful correspondence with William Harper, now living quietly in Virginia, working as a civilian contractor and spending his evenings volunteering at a veterans hospital. His letters were honest, reflective, never asking for forgiveness, but offering the kind of steady presence that had defined his imperfect love. He'd sent gifts for Elsa's birth, a hand-carved cradle, a collection of German fairy tales, a letter explaining that every child deserved to know where they came from, even when that knowledge was complicated. Last month, he'd written with unexpected news. He'd been diagnosed with a heart condition, probably had a year or 2 left, and wondered if Anna might consider visiting before the end. Not to absolve him, he'd written, but simply to say goodbye to the messy, imperfect family they'd made from wreckage. Anna had brought the letter to Munich, unable to decide. "You should go," Margaret said, as if reading her thoughts. "Not for him. For you, for Elsa. So she understands that family isn't just blood. It's also the people who choose to love us despite everything." "He killed my father?" "Yes, and he raised you with love. Both things are true." Margaret's voice was gentle but firm. "Klaus forgave him in those letters, Anna. Maybe it's time you honored that forgiveness." Little Elsa had wandered ahead, making snow angels between the graves, her laughter bright against the gray December sky. She had no idea what burden her mother carried, what impossible choices her grandmother and grandfather had made, what price 3 people had paid so she could exist at all. That innocence, Anna realized, was its own kind of redemption. That evening, Anna called the farmhouse in Virginia. Harper answered on the 3rd ring, his voice weaker than she remembered, but still distinctly his. "It's Anna." A long pause. "Anna, it's good to hear your voice. I got your letter, about your heart." "Ah, yes. The doctors are optimistic, which usually means they're lying kindly." A dry chuckle. "I wanted you to know. No pressure for you to do anything. I just thought, well, I thought you should know. Anna watched through the window as Thomas helped Elsa build a snowman in their small garden. I want to come. To visit. With my family. If that's all right. The silence on the other end stretched so long, Anna thought the connection had dropped. You have a family? Harper's voice cracked with emotion. A husband, Thomas, and a daughter, Elsa. She's 6. Smart and funny and so full of life it terrifies me sometimes. Elsa, like your mother. Yes. I would. Harper cleared his throat. I would be honored to meet them. To meet you again, as the woman you've become. They arranged it for February, when Anna had leave from her work. As she hung up, Thomas wrapped his arms around her from behind. Are you sure about this? He asked gently. He knew the whole story. She'd told him everything before they married, needing him to understand the complicated inheritance she carried. No. But I think my father, Klaus, would want me to. And maybe that's enough. February 1960. The Virginia farmhouse looked exactly as Anna remembered. White shutters, red brick chimney, the porch swing where she'd said goodbye 11 years ago. But the man who opened the door was transformed. Harper had aged decades, his hair gone white, his frame thin, his movements careful. Only his eyes remained the same, intelligent, haunted, grateful. Anna. He said her name like a prayer. Colonel. Or should I call you William now? William is fine. I'm nobody's colonel anymore. His gaze shifted to Thomas and Elsa, hovering uncertainly behind Anna. And this must be your family. Introductions were awkward but sincere. Harper shook Thomas's hand, assessed him with the instinct of a man who'd spent a lifetime reading people, and seemed satisfied. But when he knelt, stiffly, painfully, to Elsa's level, something shifted in his expression. Hello, Elsa. I'm an old friend of your mother's. Elsa studied him with Klaus Richter's fierce intelligence. Mama says you helped her when she was little, but also that it's complicated. Harper laughed, surprised. Your mother is wise. Yes, it's very complicated, but I'm glad she came, and I'm glad you're here. Over the next 3 days, they navigated the strange territory of reunion. Harper showed them the farm, older now, less productive, but still beautiful in its winter quiet. He'd kept Anna's room exactly as she'd left it, a shrine to the daughter who'd chosen truth over comfort. He'd also framed several of Klaus Richter's letters and hung them in the study, creating a memorial to the man whose death had changed all their lives. I read them sometimes, Harper admitted, standing before the framed pages with Anna, when I need to remember who I was supposed to be. Do they help? They remind me that good men can die badly, and bad men can try to do better. I'm not sure that's redemption, but it's something. On the second evening, Harper built a fire and they gathered in the living room, Anna and Thomas on the sofa, Elsa playing with wooden blocks at their feet, Harper in his old armchair. He told stories about Anna's childhood, her first day of school, the time she'd tried to save every stray cat in the county, her voracious reading habits. She was the brightest thing in this house, he said quietly. Still is, even in absence. Thomas squeezed Anna's hand, understanding the gift Harper was giving, proof that her childhood, despite its foundation of lies, had contained real love. But it was Elsa who broke through the careful politeness. Mr. William, she asked with a child's directness, are you my grandfather? The room froze. Harper's face went pale. Anna held her breath. No, sweetheart, Harper said gently. Your grandfather was a man named Klaus. He died before your mother could really know him. I'm just someone who cared for your mother when she needed help. But you loved her like a grandfather? Yes, I did. I do. Elsa considered this with 6-year-old logic. Then maybe you can be like an extra grandfather, the complicated kind. Harper's eyes filled with tears. He looked at Anna, silently asking permission. Anna nodded, her own throat tight. Yes, the complicated kind. That night, after Elsa was asleep in Anna's old room, Harper asked Anna to walk with him to the barn. The February air was cold and sharp, the sky blazing with stars. There's something I need to give you, he said, leading her to a corner where an old trunk sat covered in dust. He opened it carefully, revealing a collection of items Anna recognized instantly. Klaus Richter's personal effects, his watch, his wedding ring, a photograph of your parents on their wedding day, his doctorate certificate, everything that was in his possession when he died. Harper's hands trembled as he lifted each item. I kept them, told myself I was preserving them for you, but really I was too much of a coward to destroy them and too guilty to look at them. Anna took the watch, feeling its weight, imagining her father checking the time, marking the hours until he could see his daughter again. Hours that never came. There's one more thing. Harper reached into his coat and pulled out a sealed envelope. My will. I'm leaving you the farmhouse, Anna. Everything I have. Not because it makes us even, nothing could do that, but because it's yours by right. You grew up here. You made it a home when I only knew how to make it a house. William, I can't. You can, and you will. Because someday, little Elsa might want to know this place, might want to see where her mother learned to be strong. He pressed the envelope into her hands. Besides, I owe Klaus Richter a debt I can never repay, but I can try. I can give his granddaughter an inheritance. Not money, but memory. A place where his daughter was loved, even if imperfectly. Anna held the envelope, the watch, the wedding ring, artifacts of 2 fathers, 2 lives, 2 versions of family. Klaus asked me to take whatever kindness the world offered. This is that kindness, isn't it? I hope so. I've spent 20 years trying to balance scales that can't be balanced. This is my last attempt. They stood in the barn, breath misting in the cold air, surrounded by the smell of hay and old wood and history that refused to die. Thank you, Anna whispered, for keeping these, for keeping me, for trying, even when trying wasn't enough. It's more grace than I deserve. Maybe, but it's the grace my father asked me to give. The next morning, they said goodbye. Harper held Elsa gently, whispering something Anna couldn't hear. Elsa giggled and kissed his weathered cheek. As they drove away, Anna watched him in the rearview mirror. An old man standing on a porch, waving slowly, growing smaller and smaller until he disappeared. William Harper died 6 months later, in his sleep, peacefully. Anna flew back for the funeral, stood over his grave, and read aloud the final lines from Klaus Richter's last letter. Take whatever kindness the world offers. You owe the dead nothing but memory. She buried both her fathers with honor, carried both their names with pride, and taught her daughter that family was built not from perfection, but from the courage to love despite every reason not to. Years later, Anna would bring Elsa back to the Virginia farmhouse, now theirs, and show her the framed letters on the study wall. She would tell the whole story, the cruelty and the kindness, the lies and the love, the impossible choice between truth and mercy. And Elsa, grown wise beyond her years, would say, "You chose both, Mama. That's what made you strong. Some endings aren't happy or sad. they're simply honest. And in that honesty, in the space between forgiveness and judgment, between Richter and Harper, between the fathers she'd lost and the daughter she'd found, Anna finally discovered what it meant to be whole. To this day, visitors to the small Munich cemetery sometimes report seeing a woman and a young girl leaving flowers on Klaus Richter's grave, their offerings placed carefully beside American lilies that appear mysteriously each year on the anniversary of his death. Sent, locals whisper, by an anonymous donor in Virginia who never forgot the man he couldn't save, and the daughter he tried to honor by loving the child left behind. If this story moved you, if it made you think about the complicated nature of family, justice, and forgiveness, leave a comment sharing your thoughts. Subscribe for more stories that explore the gray spaces where human beings try their best and often fail. But sometimes, just sometimes, find redemption in the wreckage. Thank you for listening. Remember, the truth doesn't always set us free, but it makes freedom possible.